I'm going to talk about scale and measuring today. So scale can be 1 inch in real life to 3 inches on paper, or it could be 1 foot in real life to 1 inch on paper. Whatever unit you use doesn't matter as long as it stays consistent on paper and in real life. So you have to understand that we're talking about units of measure. When we come to actually measuring things, sometimes it's really important for you to understand things actually come down to measurements. And sometimes you have to learn how to accurately measure something. For example, if your teacher tells you to do something on an 18 by 24 piece paper, you have to know what papers are 18 by 24, which might require you to get out your yardstick and measure to 18. 18 by 24, and measure that on your piece of paper to see, is it 18 by 24? Measuring smaller things. If you're trying to measure to see if maybe your box that you're drawing is actually 4 by 4, for example, I'm going to look at the edge of this ruler. On this particular ruler, that measuring starts right here, not on the edge. Why do they do that? Because they want to make sure that they don't cut off part of the actual first inch, because they probably cannot be very precise, because this happens to be a really cheap ruler. Okay, you may have a really nice metal ruler that has the measurements going right to the edge and everything is precise and perfect. But if you're not using a ruler like that, then you've got to make sure that when you start your measuring, you're starting from right here. So for here on your inches, and then understand that, you know, we're to a 1/2 inch, a whole inch, and 1.5 inches. In an inch, it's divided into quarters. So if you think of money and you have quarters, you have 4 quarters in a dollar. The biggest line that you see, let's look between the first and the second inch right here. The biggest line that you see is the 1/2 inch mark. The other biggest lines that you see coming down are the 1/4 inch marks. So if somebody is telling you to measure something and it's 1.25 inches, it's gonna fall like right there on your ruler. So understanding how that is divided up, typically we'll say things are 3/4 of an inch. This is really important for matting things. It's really important for drawing sometimes and understanding things like scale. If you're measuring in centimeters, you have to start from right here. The nice thing about centimeters is they're divided into even tens. So for a lot of you, it's easier to maybe measure things in centimeters. So unless you have to measure something because somebody said it's 18 by 24, for example, your teacher tells you to make sure you use an 18 by 24 piece of paper, and then you have to measure it in inches. But if you are just measuring something for scale, maybe you want to use centimeters because maybe that is easier for you if you come to getting like a decimal point. So think about what's easiest for you and what you feel most comfortable with. But it's really important that you are aware of your measuring and what units you're using when you measure. And other things that you might use, this is a protractor. Now, the advantage to using this in a drawing class might be that like right now we're drawing a lot of boxes. You can line this right up on the corner of your box, and you can see this little crosshair right here. If I line that up on my piece of paper, I can tell if my corner is actually 90 degrees. So sometimes that can be very helpful. For example, right now when I line that crosshair up on this box, I can check to make sure that this angle is at a 90-degree angle exactly, because it needs to be. Those lines have to stay parallel to the sides of my piece of paper, and everything has to stay at 90 degrees. So sometimes it's just useful to have a protractor just to go back and just double check things after you have started to draw out something that needs to have a 90-degree angle. So this is a compass, and I use it when I'm measuring an exact 45-degree angle and 2-point perspective. There are not a ton of times that you need to use it, but that's one of them. We don't always have to measure everything exactly 45, but sometimes I like to create a grid to have, so that when I'm struggling to figure something out in perspective, I can use my grid as a place to go in and kind of figure things out. So these can be very useful for that. There may be a few other times, but I'm going to show you how to use it really quick. So when you measure, you actually move this back and forth. So if you're measuring something, you start with this right here, and then you measure to, maybe you'll do a little intersection point. And so a lot of times you're just kind of taking it and spinning it and drawing it. Obviously that'll make like a perfect circle too, but we don't, in a drawing class, we don't use these for that. We would just use it for the actual measurement. So this is a compass, and that's how you would use it in this class. So hopefully this has helped you a little bit with understanding how to measure things in drawing and anything else. Measuring is super important. If you're going to put in tiles in your kitchen and you're just a little tiny bit off, like a 1/4 inch with every measurement or every tile, by the end you're going to be way off. So measuring is just part of our life, and it's something that you need to be able to do. Measuring requires exactness. And sometimes in drawing, we need there to be exactness. If we want to make sure that the perspective is perfect, we need to make sure that everything is exact. So sometimes we aren't just guesstimating. Sometimes we're actually going in and measuring, and this is how you measure.